Busy Bee is a craft gift box for over 18s. Originally it was going to be aimed at children, as I thought there was a need for this, but after talking to Emma Carr, the Arts, Creative, Health and Communication Manager at Friendly Health Charity, she deals with things like this all the time, she stated that there are many things like this aimed at kids, but for the over 18s, they are often forgotten, leading to an increase in anxiety and stress and a decline in mental health. So I then decided to change my audience to this. The logo is meant to be a play on the phrase busy as a bee. It's there to give you the keep busy, keep the mind off the thing, be a busy bee. It's kind of the reasoning behind the name. Originally I was going to have other pun elements, but I felt that this works better with how the branding is meant to go and what's meant to be done. Originally I'd hand-lettered this, but I ended up using a font and editing a bit to make it look better, as I wanted a handwritten font with a circle of garland around it that I hand drew. I made a paper mock-up of the box I would be using the large simple illustration of the dot and the dot bees on the outside. In industry I would have it printed professionally, but considering I'm only making one outside of the box, I decided to just make one. The box has three main elements: a reading book, an activity book, and a craft section. With this it also has basic stationery supplies and an edible element. This was due to talking to Emma. This is due to the fact that when people are stuck in hospital for long term, they tend to only be able to have hospital food, quite limited resources. So having a nice little treat or something that they don't usually have access to is quite fun, quite nice, rewarding, quite joyful, which is good. So with the Emma Carr situation, she mentioned that the craft element is good, but also try and avoid something to do, something to read, and something to eat. Eat is covered, something to do is the craft element and activity book I was planning. And the something to read was something I hadn't really considered. So I decided to make the story snippets book. For this it would have 3 first chapters of books and a short story in between. So that would make 5 different chapters. For this example I used old classical stories, so things that aren't copyrighted anymore. I tried to keep in with the branding for this, make it look the same, like so simple writing using the basic font, more decorative pages with the bright orange pages to help differentiating the beginning of one chapter to the next, so you know which was the difference. It's called story snippets, so it's like a small bit of a story to kind of go, oh, have you read this? Have you tried this? To try and get them to see something they might not have necessarily considered. So the activity book has more of a focus on puzzles. So I was going to have more creative elements, but since I have the crafts for this, I felt like having the crafts would stimulate the creativity side of the brain, whereas the activity book could stimulate the more intellectual side, as encouraging both of those is going to be good for someone who's going to be stuck in a long-term and quite a sterile, boring environment. Keeping the brain busy and keeping the hands busy, important aspects to help encourage the mental health, as studies have shown that the mental health is also linked to the physical health. So someone who is sat in a hospital all day getting anxious and scared and worried about their situation is going to find the whole experience a lot more stressful and hard to deal with than they would if they had things to keep them busy and their mind occupied. Time will go a lot faster, it won't be as stressful. They can focus on recovering or making themselves better. So the puzzles are something I tried to focus on. They would have the 3 themes. So you have the sport theme, the garden theme, and the travel theme. The garden theme is meant to focus more, obviously, gardening, kind of more local, things like that. So I went with gardening, as it's quite a broad aspect. Most people know enough about that. Sports, because again, that's quite big. You can do famous sports people, the different sports elements, things like that. And then for the travel one, I decided to focus more on the landmarks, as I felt that this was more well known. I didn't want to go into too hyper-specific sections, as it needed to be able to reach a broad variety of people. I was looking for a font to use for this, writing, making sure it all looked good, and a lot of the fonts that I found just weren't right. As you can see with the font that I ended up using in the story snippets for the cover and the chapter for the chapter pages, they were all quite thick or too textured, and I wanted something a bit more thinner and simple. While making notes for what I was going to include in the activity book, I ended up writing the notes down in a notebook. I ended up really liking how this looked. I ended up with just simple, like larger cap, small caps for uppercase and lowercase, thin, simple lines, and it looked really well. It worked really well. It worked with the Open Sans font I wanted to use, which is more quite a simple, rounded font. So I decided to combine those together quite nicely, and then I could have the more slightly thicker decorated font for other elements like the logo and titles and things like that. So since I was now using my own handwriting, obviously I couldn't just handwrite every single title or word I needed by hand, as it's impractical and just a waste of time. So I made my own font by going on Calligraphy, downloading the printable worksheet, printing off and handwriting in that to then scan and go through the program to get the font back. Just called Alanis, as I didn't think about naming it at the time, but if I was to name it, it would be the Busy Bee font. Works with that. I did have to edit it a little bit as I had messed up on some of the letters, so turning an L into an I, so I went to Photoshop and used Content Aware obviously to fix it, make everything look good. And I did try making a thicker version. However, I didn't really like the thickness look, as I quite like the thin look as it worked with the hand-drawn illustrations I had decided to use. My handwriting and my illustration style were very similar thickness, as I used the same pen. I tried to keep them the same size, so that when I then obviously put out the handwriting and the illustrations together, they worked well as a cohesive unit. So I ended up sticking with just 4 colours for this. 5, I guess, if you count the whitish grey I used. It was slightly off-white, because I felt like the white was too perfect and true. For this, I had the bright blue of the box. This was like the feature colour, the standout colour to grab the attention, and also this bright orange, which was also the feature standout colour. These were to make it, obviously, these are bright, quite happy colours to work with the environment of the quite sterile hospitals. Bright, colourful, fun, joyful, that kind of thing. And then obviously, since I had such bright colours, to make them more work together and to make it a bit slightly more mature, I ended up using the dark blue as a neutralizer colour, so for the inside of the box, and to help try and differentiate some elements, so that the orange elements really stood out, and then the blue elements helped just make that orange pop a bit more. Once I had these 3, I just felt like it needed another neutralizer colour, so I went for these really nice, like, dusky rose pink, and this was again to help add a bit more of a mature feel. So I had the 2 more darker, duller colours, the blue and the pink, and the 2 more brighter colours that I could use well together as a colour palette. They looked really nice, and so that I could have the bright, colourful elements with the orange and the blue, but to kind of mute and dull a little bit more to add a bit more of a mature feel with the blue and the pink. The pink would only really show up in the themed areas, so the activity book, the pencil pot, and the instructions, as I didn't want it to be an overwhelming colour, as I didn't want it to come across too gendered, as it might do if I end up using too much pink, whereas the blues and the orange are quite neutral, gender neutral colours. With the stationery, since I was having that pattern, the dotted blue and the leaf orange, as most of it tended to be, although I do have the dotted orange on the storybook, as I felt the orange was a bit bright. I didn't want too much of the light blue on the inside of the box. I decided to split the stationery in 2 and have those as wraparounds to help, 1, bring the blue into the box a little bit, but not so much that it was overpowering and overwhelming the other colours and features, and 2, to help divide the stationery a little bit. So the rubber and the pencils, coloured pencils, are in the orange. Obviously, these are the creative aspects, whereas as well as the notebook, which is just a blank sketchbook that they can use to colour or make notes in if they wish, whereas the normal pencil and the metallic pens for the bunting craft are just in the blue to obviously help, so you can look at a glance and know that's the coloured pencil, that is the normal pencil. Bit of differentiation is always a bit nice. For these, obviously, then it came to what would the pencils be stored in. For this, I decided to just keep it super simple and made a pencil pot. It's a collapsible pencil pot that I made myself, basically just simply so that when you need it, you can pop it up, put the pencils in it, so it's not going to get lost, not going to roll anywhere, and then when they're done, they can be folded down, put away in the box, or it can be kept up no matter what they wish to use it. It's there for them. I ended up making that and the craft elements change with the theme, as one of the feedback I got from the few people I managed to talk to. The only thing that was going to change was the activity book, and it wasn't quite enough change of theming, which was really helpful, and I agree, so I made it so that the craft and the pencil pot and the activity book all changed with the theming, keeping them with the same colours, the same branding, the same pattern, but changing them up a little. With the crafts, I just kept a very simple bunting, just paper bunting. They can decorate themselves with pens and washi tape that I provided, as I had to make sure there was no sharp objects, nothing messy like paint or glitter, and no glue, nothing that's going to get sticky and get in the way. Because of this did then limit my choices. I decided to use pipe cleaners and origami, as no matter your ability level, you can make things with them. For the advertising and the marketing, I decided to use social media for this process. This is because of research that I looked into, which states that 84% of adults over 18 use social media, and 2/3 use it every day. So since it's a nationwide ad, it makes sense to use that, as it is more just for raising awareness for the product. That it would be a gift kit on a site like the notanother bunch of flowers.com, where they have a bunch of other recovery and post-surgery hospital get well kits. So it would be the craft version of that, obviously, as they have some things like a colour theory and a puzzle book one, but obviously my box is to make it all together, so it's one big thing that they use as a combination, as a gift set. Because of this, I didn't have to make website or specific branding, it's just more to raise awareness as a ad. So it's quite simple, just a simple social media campaign, cost effective, considering I don't want this to be expensive, as more cost goes into this, the more expensive the box will be, so less people can have access to it. While I was making this, I realised I have 3 different crafts, 3 different themes, and 3 key elements. So I use that as an important part of my branding as the 3 tile section. And this would run on Facebook and YouTube, as these are the 2 most popular platforms. We're at YouTube at 85% of people using it every day, and the Facebook at 78%, according to a study in 2016.